Hi there. So 1 minute after 12 o'clock, this noontime webinar. Wayne is the guy who's got the OUTA on his shirt. I was going to say the guy who hasn't got a lot of hair, but I'm afraid as we get a little older, Wayne, that's one of the things that go. Wayne and I were at school in Newcastle too long ago to imagine. But what did you do since leaving school in the 70s, Wayne?
Yeah, Alec, well, I went to varsity down in Durban for a while, got my BSc, and then applied for a job at Avis as a trainee. Started out cleaning cars, believe it or not, in Durban, and just went from there. It was an amazing organization, great company to work for from leadership development programs and that, and worked my way through the organization up until the ops director position. Moved around the country quite a lot, and then I took some time out with my family. We went and built a small country hotel, but retirement, I think it was too early it wasn't really a retirement decision, but then got asked to come back into the corporate world. Went back and was CEO for Avis for about 5 years, and then the whole OUTA initiative came to the fore in about 2012, which was quite exciting, and that's taken me to where I am now. Last 7 years being an activist.
Well, and we'll be talking about that in a moment. But first, let's make sure all the tech is working the way it should be. Stuart Lohman's our managing editor, as always, looking after the important part of this broadcast. Stu?
Thanks, Alec. Good to be here as always. Just quickly, there's a little high-five signal on your control panel on the right-hand side. If you can see Wayne and Alec and the presentation below, can you just click that button so we know the visuals are working? If you can hear my voice, the sound should be working. Let's see, it's coming. I've got some high fives there. Oh, there we go, lots of high fives. Thanks a lot all. And Alec likes to keep the conversation going with the questions. There's a little questions bar on the control panel. If you plumb your questions in there, Alec can pass them on to Wayne and we can get a nice conversation going. But good luck, Alec, and Wayne, have a good day.
Thank you.
Brilliant. And I've just stuck the sound up a little bit to make sure that we're hearing things better. Maybe from a high-five perspective, can you tell us if the sound is better now, or are we blasting you away? Okay, looks like
we've got a lot of high-fives there, Alec.
Plenty. I see there are lots of questions as well. It was blasting me away, so I just need to sort that out. As you can see in the background here, Wayne, we're actually based in Sandton. Now, I've been to your offices in Randburg, and you guys certainly don't, put it this way, you don't invest excessively in your rent. You really keep it quite frugal, and I guess that's the same thing for most of the people who work with you. Do they work on sub-market related salaries, being activists like yourself?
Yeah, you know, Alec, that's an interesting question. When we put the OUTA model together, we realized that we needed to pay market-related salaries, and to try and run an organization like this, when your projects take years, as you saw in the Duvenage one, you've got to have continuity and you've got to have the best staff. And if you don't retain them, so we decided to go with market-related salaries and to build this legal capacity and to build a project management mindset with good communications. Those are the four ingredients, and then to get the supporters behind us and make it easy for them to contribute to keep this organization going. And as you said, we buy secondhand furniture. We don't spend a lot of money renovating the premises. In fact, we're downscaling now because we've moved into the remote working environment so well that, and we were planning for that beforehand. I was telling Stuart beforehand that even our switchboard operates remotely, but we're now going to downscale to smaller offices, reduce our rent further, have a home still, and yeah, those are some of the ingredients that have made OUTA quite, I think, effective and successful.
Let's just go back in the OUTA story before we do take the first questions, and it really started with e-tolls. How did you transition from? Well, how did you start fighting against e-tolls? You were the CEO of Avis, so you would have presumably been on the sharp end of what e-tolls would have brought. But how did you go from there, from seeing e-tolls coming in through to fighting e-tolls successfully, and then transitioning or pivoting again into now fighting tax abuse?
Yeah, well, for the first 3 years, from 2012, when we launched the legal challenge, I mean, it was absolutely frustrating that government was introducing a scheme that was not only legally needed to be challenged, but it was administratively cumbersome. It was going to fail. They hadn't done their research. We had seen that it was going to fail. We didn't want to, you know, government suffers this crisis of legitimacy when its laws cannot be applied practically. And so we decided to, first of all, engage for a whole year to try and get government to change its mind. They refused. Then we went to court. We won the interdict, but technically, the technicalities of this case, and it became very costly. We learned a lot about government's lawfare strategies and so forth. So we decided to pull back after spending a lot more money on just litigation costs.
Sorry, wait. Lawfare strategies. Lawfare strategy. That's a cool word. What exactly does it mean?
Well, it means that government wears you down in the courts. If you want to challenge government in court, they will use your taxpayers' money. They'll get the best lawyers, and they will prolong these cases. They'll introduce interlocutory challenges, and it just becomes a nightmare. And so that's why you see society, NGOs, struggle in that space, which is when we built the new OUTA and moved from this opposition to Urban Tolling Alliance, which was our OUTA, the acronym came, to the Organization Undoing Tax Abuse. We did that on the back of, while we were successfully now challenging the matter from a anti-propaganda fighting government and standing to support society, in the court cases that were coming, we were asked so often, why are we just fighting e-tolls? Why don't we tackle so much more that was going wrong in the country? I mean, Kandla was headline news all the time, Duvenage, these things were happening. And so we decided to, we just said to the public, if you get behind us, if we get the support and we can employ the team, and by the way, we want to employ litigation specialists and an advocate to head this up, because we were sick and tired of making big law firms rich. We wanted to build these cases quick, and we want to build them cheap, and that's been one of the success factors. And so yeah, so we then counter the lawfare strategy, get small external law firms just to file the papers, get low rates from good silks and senior counsel, and this formula, which has evolved, by the way, over the last 4 years, has just got better and better and better. So yeah, so we can counter the lawfare strategy, and we've got great people on board. And now we're a 40-person team, when in 2016 we were 2015 we were a 3-person team, and there was no salary for the first 3 to 4 years, and then we got the public behind us, and they've been amazing, Alec. Without them, we couldn't have done this.
Well, it's formidable. And out of what you did, or we all know that you've now done through the judgment that came from Miss Justice. I got it wrong. I didn't realize that RG Tolme was a Ronel Tolme, but that judgment was. I've urged everyone on Biznews, our whole community, to please go and read it and understand what exactly went on there. But what the rest of us don't understand is that you guys were fighting this case for 5 years. 7th of October 2015, in the judgment, it tells us was where it all started. The perseverance to go through something like that, Wayne, there must have been times when you thought, are we ever going to get to the end of it?
Yeah, there were, and again, this is another recipe for success. You know, for effective intervention in the NGO space or the civil activity space, it's time. You need time, so you need to be resilient, and that's why, again, you need to bring the people on board and keep them there. So we fired the gun, the so-called starting gun on this in March 2017. We were, I mean, there were the things that were happening in the background when Duvenage was on board at SAA in 2015 were all the catalysts to this case. But it started with the BNP Capital case, where Duvenage was clearly trying to look after a small boutique finance house to do the work that Treasury was already doing within SAA. Cynthia Stimple, you'll all know her, the brave whistleblower who engaged with us and said, guys, help, we've got to stop this. And as we interdicted and stopped that deal from happening and saw what was going on, we decided let's make Duvenage a delinquent director. Why that decision? Well, we've been filing cases with the police. The police were hijacked through state capture, NPA hijacked. Remember, Sean Abrams was there. So we decided, well, you know, this is going to have to be a civil matter. We can't wait for the NPA to give us nollie prosecute certificates to go and do some private prosecutions. What's another way we can do this and hold her accountable? And that was this delinquent director case. We met with SAPA. We agreed together, let's do this. We drove the case, and yes, it took, you know, it took 2 years just to get it into court once you'd filed the papers, because they have to allocate a lot of time. This was fought in court, by the way, not on the papers, but an actionable case, witnesses in the stand and all of that. And then they try to slow the whole process down again in November. Filibustering, the Stalingrad tactics, interlocutory challenges, they used up all the time. Unfortunately, the court said, well, look, we're not going to wait another 2 years. They found the time in February, and that happened. And then the judgment came out last week, and we're still walking on air.
You must be. Tim Elliott asks, he says, Wayne, this country should be immensely grateful for the good work that you and OUTA do. What is your view on the interaction of the NPA, not forgetting Batoy has now been in office for 15 months and no major court cases or arrests?
You know, it's frustrating. It's frustrating us as well. All I can tell you, and just prior to this meeting, had a meeting with the independent director at Hermione Cronier, and the frustrations they have, that those institutions, by the way, have been hollowed out. The state capture cabal, they have lost their investigative skills, their forensic investigation skills. There are barriers that have been put in place. There are people still on the corrupt side of things inside those organizations, slowing things down. And it's just, it's hard to try and work in that environment. It's not to say they haven't done anything. They've done quite a lot, but they've got to now dot their I's and cross their T's a hell of a lot more and better than ever before in order to get some of these cases. But they're building up. They're there. We've given a ton of information. We've got the Gupta leaks. We've got a brilliant search engine. We've got access to other leaks, and our Rudy Hanneke and Stefanie Fick, who's our full-time advocate. She heads up the legal team. They do incredible work in this space. So I think the short answer to that question, it is frustrating, but just know that it's not through lack of trying. And I think we're going to start seeing some big moves coming very, very soon, actually.
We saw a couple of appointments, in fact, in the past week at very senior areas as well. So it does seem like the NPA is getting its act together. But with your engagements with them, with Hermione Cronier and Shamila Batoy, do you think we got the right people in place to drive this bus all the way to the jail yard?
Yeah, I think so. They're good people. You know, certainly not Sean Abrams of the world. These folk want to do good. They've got good teams alongside them. They are now engaging much better with SARS, with the Special Investigations Unit, with the Hawks, all of that stuff, all of those links that were there in the past and very effectively in the past were all broken, were all decimated by Zuma and his cronies. Those links have to be fixed as well, because there's got to be a lot of cooperation between the various departments in the state in order to be effective in fighting corruption. And they're being built now. So I'm very, very confident that they have the right people. They just need more of the right people. They need more capacity. And this is what we were engaging with them about. How do we help? How do we set up a sort of a private entity outside of the NPA to build cases on their behalf and then hand it over? But you've got to be so careful even when you do that, because there are question marks that start coming, and you start getting the Zumas of the world and the EFS of the world start questioning, well, is the state working with certain individuals and not others? So there's so many factors that come into play here, and we're trying to find the best ones in order to empower them.
Shaman Prem just asked a very quick question. What is the latest with the e-toll saga?
Well, the e-toll saga, in a formal sense, they haven't reversed the decision. In a practical sense, I reckon right now it's less than 15% of people are paying. The average has been about 25% over the last 5 years. It has failed completely. Anyone who's paying their retail bills, you know, I would question that if you are, and if you are, that's fine. You want to be law-abiding, but we can assure you that they pulled the legal cases, by the way, in March last year. We were going to court to do a test case. They stopped it, and they shouldn't have. I mean, we wanted to see this thing through. We believe there's an extremely strong case, but I think they've come to the senses that it has failed. We believe they were about to make the announcement of changing how they were going to finance this road upgrade just before lockdown, then lockdown got in the way. So we wait for them to make a formal decision. But either way, if they believe it's working, well, we've proved to them it isn't, and it's failed completely. So stop paying if you are. Your money's best in your account than in their account. I can assure you that.
Well, there are some of us who pay, Wayne, and I think maybe it was you were always the naughty guy at school in Newcastle, and I was much more law-abiding. So I'm on the right. Well, perhaps not on the right side, yeah, but you know, just
no, you must stop paying now, Alec. You're naughty. You're keeping the system alive.
No. Pam Lawrence says it's very difficult to get a criminal conviction, especially with a good attorney. Can we use a similar process to stop certain individuals serving in government positions? And I think there's no doubt. We just saw this another judgment coming out in this week as well from Mr. Justice Davis, Norman Davis. Having a look at the whole lockdown regulations, how these power-drunk politicians were implementing irrational, his words, unconstitutional, his words, paternalistic, his words, laws, where they didn't even think about them. And if they can do that at the highest possible level, then there got to be a lot of other funny things happening down the way. So to that question from Pam, is there another process that you can use to start getting the wrong people out of the positions they hold?
Well, it's very difficult when it comes to an MP and parliamentary appointments and political parties. I mean, they can appoint criminals if they want to. There's an ethics process that they should be following, but we've seen the types of people that are appointed that are highly dubious. I mean, just look at some of those parliamentary committees being headed up by Mbosso Benzizwane and Faith Mutambi. These are people that we've laid charges against. As far as we're concerned, if the Hawks had done their work when we laid these charges in 2017, and the evidence is all there, they should be in jail, but they're not. They're heading up committees. So it's very difficult to interfere in the political process. So what we do as civil society is use the law and hold people to account, and we do that as quickly as we can. And you know, we laid those charges at a time when the public was saying to us, but you're wasting your time, nothing's going to happen. Well, we've always had this view that who's in power today is not necessarily in power tomorrow. Then we saw Ramaphosa come to power. We've seen Hermione and Cronje and Shamila Batoyina in the NPA. So the wheels are turning in the right direction, not as fast as we wanted to. And that's the way we will bring this fight. We are also presenting a lot of work in Parliament, asking a lot of questions. And by the way, Alec, just towards the end of last year, Parliament, in one of their strategic, assessing their effectiveness, mentioned OUTA in the document, saying that Parliament needs to be very careful, because if they don't become the oversight entity that they're supposed to be on behalf of the people, then organizations like OUTA will be the go-to institutions. And so they're acknowledging us, and they're working a lot with us, and they're listening a lot more. So things are happening. Just we wish it would happen a lot faster.
Jacques Vessels wants to know, is there a list of all the corruption instances so we can get infogram? For example, COVID-19, to put this in the face of voters, so we can stop legal battles and start winning the hearts of the people.
Well, that's the ultimate test, hey? It's the democracy that we have. How is it possible that I think it's an electoral reform process that is required, because while we have what we currently have, it's going to be very difficult. But yeah, it should all be done at the elections. We have a local election coming up next year. I think that's going to be extremely exciting, especially at the local government level, because people are fed up with the collapse of their municipalities. And we're doing a lot of work in that space, but from a disruptor application development point of view, we're going to be rolling out some exciting stuff in the near future. But yeah, I wish we could just vote out people that are grossly incompetent and vote in people that are going to do the best for everyone in society. And sadly, Alec, the poorest of the poor suffer the most under this current leadership.
They always do. They always do. Dave Scott says, respect for your achievements to date. You're definitely speaking to me, and I'm sure many others. Thank you. Alan Callenbo says, will the ANC abandon e-tolls?
Well, they've got no choice. We think so. Let me put it this way. Why we think so is they tried to roll out the exact same scheme in the Western Cape. The only difference between the Western Cape and the Gauteng scheme is that they hadn't built the road yet. They hadn't borrowed the money or built the road yet. And the judge stopped it in its tracks because of what they learned, what happened up here. So e-tolls won't work for this very reason. It's a drive now, pay later scheme. So it's not like when you go down to Durban or Mpumalanga, they won't lift the boom until you've paid. So that's 100% hit rate. If in South Africa, you're going to introduce drive now, pay later, and you've got an e-nature system that is inaccurate to roughly 50%, you've got administrative challenges that they cannot enforce, well, then it fails. And that's exactly why it's failed. So we believe they will never be able to introduce an electronic tolling scheme in this country. And it's sad because the technology does work around the world, but it works when you can administer it properly and we've got good governance. Well, I don't have to tell you more about that, but they cannot administer a system like this. They will not administer R2, by the way, and R2 is the next big fight we have looming. We have a court case pending as they want to launch that. But that whole demerit system, we're not opposing it because we don't believe in the demerit system, but it might work in Australia and New Zealand. It's not going to work here because, again, e-natus and the whole shambles that comes with administration that happens so often in this country is diabolical.
Mark Dutoy has got quite a long comment here. He says, Shamila Batoy says it takes at least 5 years to prosecute a case, and she's working with an organization that is still broken after state capture. Is it really, in your opinion, a valid reason why high-profile looters are still not in jail?
No, we don't believe that's a valid reason, and I think we'd challenge Shamila there. I mean, you know, it shouldn't take 5 years. Our view has always been that with half or 10% of the evidence that they have got in so many of these cases, in any normal country where the rule of law flows, those people would have been arrested by now. There are other factors at play here, so it shouldn't take 5 years. Some cases take a while to develop, but I mean, our case against Duvenage, when we made the decision 3 years ago, and where we got to now, 2 years of that 3 years was just taken just to get a date in court. If you can fast track this stuff, and this is what we're saying, we sit on the National Anti-Corruption Forum as well, and we're trying to get government to introduce processes that speed up the corruption fighting elements. So, you know, why not have corruption courts? Why not institute other processes, put the expertise in, and let's fast track this process? If you can, I think we could get a lot of people to court a lot faster. But this is we've got to keep working with government on this because we can't make the law and we can't arrest people.
It's a lovely cartoon, and one of our partners is Zapiro, and that's why I've used quite a few of his cartoons in this presentation, because it goes straight to the jugular when you see the way he puts things together. But look at that crowd down the bottom that goes Brian Molefe, Zwane, Manyi, Van Rooyen, Brown, and more and more. And we now know in Nsameza, we know that these guys are crooks. It's been well publicized through other court judgments, and yet they aren't being put into jail. What about, while we talk about that, and there's many questions, Wayne, so I'll keep this short from my side, but what about the decisions to have, first of all, the Zondo Commission, and a lot of stuff coming out of the Zondo Commission, but now it's all gone on hold because of COVID-19. Is that fulfilling a purpose? Because you would have thought with a commission of inquiry, information comes out, as in the Duvenage case. That information is available to the prosecutors or the law enforcers, and yet it's almost like they're waiting for the commission to finish all of its business before they do anything.
Yeah, and they shouldn't. They can operate at the same time. It can run concurrently. So what you've got, the commission is doing fantastic work. They've got a lot of information. We believe that the powers that be and the criminal justice system can go and fetch that. We believe they've fetched a lot of it. They are compiling the cases with a lot of that. They don't have to wait. Remember as well, the beauty of when Ramaphosa came in is Jacob Zuma was trying to bring in the law. He had tried to promulgate it that would not allow information that was presented at the Zondo Commission to be used in court. That was reversed, thankfully. So they should be able to take a lot of that, and the work that we've done. We've laid charges against a number of politicians, those ones in that picture. And yeah, again, it just comes back to this time-consuming, frustrating. But I firmly believe, Alec, that given time and given those people stay there, and Ramaphosa, while there's a lot of question marks, is still the best person for the job as far as we're concerned when you look at what else is available in the ANC. Given all of those things and a bit more time, I think you will see things happening. I've said that before and almost said it should have happened last year. So it is frustrating for us, I can assure you, but that's why we're engaging with the powers that be now, and they are listening.
Interesting point you made earlier about the municipal elections next year. If the ANC don't want to get smashed, they better start putting people in jail quickly. Interesting. Politicians need to have some kind of a motivation to retain their power, and I'm sure that's going to play a big role. Okay, that's it from me. I'm going to now go straight into the rest of the questions for the final half hour. Rob Matthews asked, during this time of lockdown, the cost of lost jobs has been in the private sector only. We still have to pay for inflated public sector administrators, and now I see allegations of overtime being paid to ministers. There is no version of this that is fair. How do we initiate a way to hold back payments of tax and rates until we see a more even-handed approach to the cost of lockdown?
That's a great question. Yeah, it's absolutely disgusting. I wrote a piece earlier this week about that. So let's talk local government, because that's where the withholding of rates from property point of view is a lot easier and stronger than a tax revolt at a national level. And we've written about that as well. Unless you get big business on board that will hold back the VAT because they collect the VAT and pay it, will hold back the PAYE because they pay that over, and the company taxes. You don't get a tax revolt. Secondly, I've always said that you be careful what you wish for with a tax revolt, because if you had a fully blown tax revolt, well, everything collapses and you live in anarchy. What you need to do is to fix the problem. When it comes to local government, it is absolutely absurd that businesses are being decimated, people are losing their jobs, taking salary cuts, and yet you have all these municipalities just this month now putting their budgets in to say, hey guys, we're expecting between a 5 and 11% salary increase, and all these other things and bonuses and that. And we've said absolutely not. We've written to the Cogta Minister and Nkosazana Dlamini Zuma, very busy with other stuff. We haven't got a response from them. That's why we're now writing to all the municipalities to say, if you think under these conditions, while the economic meltdown is happening around you, that you are going to get salary increases and pass those on in the form of rates increases to property owners, you best know what's coming your way. This is not a situation where it is government or municipals managed the same old way. You have to change your attitude and approach. They're already defunct, they're already collapsing. So I think what we're going to see, Alec, is a lot more of what happened in Makana and Grahamstown. Society, and we are building the platforms to do that, to take on local government, to hold them to account, and to say, if this is the way you want to run it, we're going to process a legal challenge. We're going to have you councillors removed, and we're going to start running these towns a different way. And that's what's, and by the way, there've been some successful cases along that in that regard. I think that's what you're going to see a lot of going forward if we're going to make sure that the places where we live and where we invest our businesses in survive. So we're in for some very interesting times, but it takes civil society and it takes active citizenry to do that. We've got to hold their feet to the fire, and we're going to have some fun with that this coming year.
Michael Zeman wants to know, are there any additional delinquent director applications that you're going to make?
Yeah, there are. In fact, we want to test this. Maybe the viewers here, we're going to put out some feelers on this. We we're of the view that we learned quite a lot, and this is how society can start holding their feet to the fire of these people. There are a lot of people in these SOEs, by the way, Alec, that are walking the streets, as you said earlier, Anush Singh, Mark Pamensky, Brian Molefe, and how do we get them to feel the pain if they're all made delinquent directors and cannot operate in boards? And I mean, even Duvenage can't even be the chairperson of the Jacob Zuma Foundation. It gives us a lot of pleasure to say that. But how do we do this? Now, that case that we bought was very expensive and took time. It was, as we said, in courts with witnesses, but you can also fight these in the papers. So we're toying with the idea of setting up the OUTA Delinquent Directors Department. We're going to be seeking potentially, this is where we do want some volunteers, retired advocates and legal specialists to get this, what we call not quite a sausage machine, but to get these cases built and file them and have many people in a faster space of time, but a lot cheaper to be brought to book in this case. We would need to fund it because going to court even in that space requires funds. And I think if we can get the public on board to support that notion, we can get the model right, that'll be an exciting one. And then you could possibly see in the next few years, 10s, 15, 20, 50 more delinquent director cases. They're very rare. There aren't many in this country, but we think we can turn that around and bring that to fruition.
What a brilliant idea. If you name and shame, it's likely that that will have its own power, even before you have to wait for the judges to give you permission on that or to give you confirmation of it. Evan Dold wants to know how many retired legal experts are stepping forward to help. Oh, nice one, Evan. And he posted that question a long time before.
Evan, we've always employed our people for the long term, but now Stefani and the EXCO team, and again, I said earlier, Stefani Fick heads up our litigation team, our accountability team. We're toying now with this idea of how do we now bring in some volunteers, retired people to do a lot of this work. And we have had some input from people out there. There are a number of out there. So it's about getting the right people, the expertise, because this is now when you go into commercial law and the Companies Act, and you need that type of expertise. You need project management skills. So I think we're gonna roll out something that's quite exciting.
Kenneth McPherson says, "Ach no man, Alec, why on earth would you put your money into an unlawful system? Stop paying the e-tolls." Max Abramson says, "How much would the price of petrol have to be increased if an e-toll levy were introduced in Gauteng only? Why is there so much resistance to this, which would appear to be the simplest means of resolving the problem?"
Well, exactly. We said right in the beginning that had they added 10 cents to the fuel levy when they made the decision to do the upgrade, by the way, right now they would have already paid for the bonds, but they decided not to. They decided to introduce a scheme that was going to cost over R1 billion a year just to administer before R1 went into the tarmac. That was some of the irrationality we were talking about. And that is if they had a 90% compliance rate, by the way. They never even got to paying off half of just the collection process every year. So yeah, 10 cents to the fuel levy then would have already seen the infrastructure paid off. And guess what? They've raised the fuel levy by over R2.50. So they got the money, Alec. They got it. I promise you. At the time, it was they were getting about 24 billion rand a year from the fuel levy. They're now getting 80 billion rand a year. And it only took 2 billion a year to finance that upgrade, which, by the way, was paid. It was double the price they paid for this road. They paid 18 billion rand for this road upgrade. Our investigations with engineers put that price tag at no more than 9 billion rand. So you and I have paid more than we should have anyway.
Well, another Madupi, Kusili.
Yeah.
The work you do, Wayne, is so appreciated. But here's a question from Dion Marburg, which in fact I put to Paul O'Sullivan, who was with us a couple of weeks ago. So why don't you guys work together? And Dion says, how about collaboration with other organizations like Forensics for Justice?
Yeah, I mean, Paul O'Sullivan and myself, we engage quite often. He's done a lot of good work on the Duvenage matter. Has also laid charges there. I mean, we work with the Ahmed Kathrada Foundation, with partially Section 27 Helen Suzman Foundation, Corruption Watch. There's quite a lot of good guys out there. We engage in a bigger team. Open Secrets and Ahmed Katrada are trying to get civil society work together. But I must tell you this, Alec, when I first started this, I had the same question. It should be so easy for civil society, all these organizations, just to work together. But it's actually one of the most difficult things, and it's very frustrating. I can only liken it to herding cats. But the reality is that each civil society organization has its own mandate, has its own board, it has its own culture, it has its own egos, it has its own boards that it has to respond to, its own funding mechanisms, and everybody's chasing a very small pot of money to support all of us. And I tried once just to get one letter signed when we were fighting I think it was the nuclear deal, and just to get 5 organizations to sign one letter, Alec. It took us 4 days because one of them wanted this sentence in and one of them wanted that sentence in. It just became a nightmare. So it isn't easy, and it should be easy to all collaborate. It doesn't work the way it should, and so we just get on with our job of doing what we do best.
Yeah, it is in the public interest if you guys can have more of a united front, but politics gets in the way, egos get in the way, and that's unfortunate even in this area. Andrew Wilmot wants to know, what's your view on the ANC's obsession with a new SAA? It's a good question because you saw from what the judge found that had it not been for Dudu Myeni and Zuma and the way they plundered SAA and really just stuffed things up, the airline would have been okay. It presumably, certainly from what Judge Tomei said, it would have gone into COVID-19 in pretty good shape.
Absolutely, that airline was well run, and I remember when I was still with Avis, we had arrangements or relationships with them, agreements. The car rental airlines, hotels, the whole travel industry work well together. The caliber of people that we were working with and engaging with at the world travel markets, and that it was an incredibly well-run airline, SAA, for many, many years. And one can argue about whether Coleman Andrews was right to hollow it out from its asset ownership and lease back. These are all decisions that you see in the business world on a regular basis, but it was profitable. But by the time Dudu Myeni took it over, it was a going concern. And it is politicians that meddle in state-owned entities that mess things up completely, especially in a competitive world, because government cannot run business the way business runs business. They cannot compete. They don't move fast enough. They don't have the innovation, the skills, and when they start losing the skill sets, the likes of the Sylvain Bosks and the Nico Besaidnots and Wolf and a number of them and Cynthia Stimple, well, you just lose all that skill and then the airline just crashes. And that's exactly what Dudu Myeni was the catalyst to. That she literally put pressure on those people to leave that organization. And I don't think SAA is salvageable anymore. It's gone far too far. I think they should open the skies. We do not, it's a vanity project to have a flag on the tail of an aircraft. Ethiopian Airways are doing it far better than us. It's defunct. It's gone. You cannot resurrect it. And why would you want to throw 21 billion rand at this? We don't need airlines. The private sector will take that up and run it far cheaper than SAA. So it's just so sad that it got to this, but it's too far dead now.
The 21 billion, remember, we were in for it anyway. That's government guaranteed debt primarily. So I think we're on other opposite sides of the fence here. If you can get exactly those people, the Sylvain Bosks, Wolf Meyer left here to become CFO of a much bigger airline in Saudi Arabia. And so we got the caliber of the people. Our pilots get jobs all over the world. It's just maybe we were in. I get what Ramaphosa and Gordon are doing here. We were in for the money anyway. So why not just try and get the right people in the organization? But that's not what this is about. This is about you answering questions and giving us your opinion.
Just on that, Alec, let me tell you what will happen. Two things. They won't get the right people in, and that won't be the end of the money. They'll put in the 21 billion, but they'll be coming back for 5 billion every year thereafter. So there's too much history to show that that'll happen. Just can it. But if they got the right people in and they cut it at 21 billion, maybe. but that's a long stretch.
Okay. Well, let's hope Nico Biznež does get the job there, because he showed, certainly in the court papers, that he's a very competent operator. The National Command Control Council, this is from Anna Forsman, has no parliamentary oversight. So how are they considered constitutional? This is bypassing proper oversight. Wayne?
Well, that's a very good question. So we have gotten prepared, but we are just deliberating which way to go. The Disaster Management Act is unconstitutional. There's a gaping void there with regards to oversight. You know, that if this whole disaster was declared under the Emergency Act, it would have been a State of Emergency Act. There would have been far greater oversight, because there, after 21 days, it doesn't hamstring government to operate and introduce the necessary regulations quickly to deal with the disaster, but it allows oversight and it allows Parliament and public through Parliament to question some of the decisions. And because they're not now held accountable, there's no accountability, they don't have to open up and respond to Parliament. You have what we have. Now you have to go and challenge the regulations in court. So you're quite right, that is a big problem. And the Disaster Management Act needs to be challenged in court on its unconstitutionality. Fix it, don't scrap it. We still need to fight the pandemic. Just the decisions that are made that people need to be held accountable to them. And that's not what's happening. So the DMA has to be fixed, and quite quickly. We see that the politicians, political parties, the DA, and that are going to court to try and do that. We think they've gone to the wrong court. They're probably going to be pushed back from the Constitutional Court down to the High Court. It's a bit of a mess, and will make a decision to step in the next week or so if we have to.
Robert Brons wants to know, what's the status on the question of the new IRBA chief executive? This is a story that Rob Rose wrote about on Financial Mail last week, where the chairman of the audit committee at Tongaat is now going to be the CEO of IRBA. I mean, really, are they really pulling our chains on this?
It's madness. It's absolute madness. So we've written to the minister. Again, they're so busy. This one reports into Tito Mboweni, and twice now. By the way, there's not even a board at URBA. They saw they finished their time and vacated on the 9th of May. So there's no board to even hold her to account. But yes, the previous board, for some strange reason, have appointed her as the CEO. And yes, she was the she was the chair of the audit and compliance committee at Tongaat, right in the thick of the questions that are being asked about their financial reporting. It's wrong. She should not be in that position. But now Tito Mboweni is floundering with how to deal with this. It sounds like he has to first appoint the new board, then they're going to look into it. So we've said we'll suspend her right now. You've got Bernard, I forget his surname there, but he's the current CEO, a very competent person, been there a long time. He could carry hold the fort for a long time. In fact, I don't even know why they're moving him up. But yeah, she should not be in that position. For an oversight entity of this nature, we cannot have anybody with that type of track record.
But it's extraordinary that the lady herself doesn't get it. That she doesn't realize that if you blow it that badly, as she's done at Tongaat, then just step away. In the way, in fact, an example was given from the chairman of Steinhoff. She was involved on a very peripheral basis, and yet she decided that the best thing to do was to step back and to give an example. It's I
don't know why she can't. I agree.
Do you foresee individuals being locked up as a result of the State Capture Commission? This is from Andrew Taylor.
Yes, if the rule of law flows, yes, the State Capture Commission's information is feeding now into the NPA. And again, when the rule of law is flowing and properly, there is no reason why a lot of those people should not be in jail, right up to Jacob Zuma. But Mosebenzi Zwane, Faith Matambi, as we've said, Anosh Singh, Brian Molefe, Salim Essa. I mean, speak to Rudy, who's our state capture guru. Every day we engage with him, and more comes out of those Gupta leaks. It's just amazing. But yeah, we believe that a lot of people will end up in jail in time. It's just how quick is that time?
Piwa Sukumani wants to know, can you find out which companies Eskom is overpaying and then naming those companies? Eskom doesn't want to name them.
Yeah, we're trying to. We are engaging with Eskom. We've met with Andre de Ruyter and his executive team. We've asked a lot of questions. We're waiting for some answers on those. One of them is we need all the information of the cases. By the way, we want to hold boards of these state institutions, the current boards, to account for not doing their work of going after the previous directors who ruined these companies, because it's their role to do it. It's not civil societies, even though we will play some of that role. Yeah, I think we've asked now. We've requested the name of the 7 companies, the coal companies that they are overpaying, that they say they're overpaying, and for some reason they think that this is it's information that's not due to the public, or shouldn't be open to the public. Well, it should be. We're paying those bills. So we want that information, and we will get it. If we have to go to court to get it, we'll get it.
Pete Cronje, who says he's a retired person and a pensioner of the Government Employees Pension Fund, wants to know if you would look into the PRC GEPF, and should there happen something behind the scenes to unlawfully use the Government Employees Pension money to bail out Eskom.
Yeah, it's a very complex one. We've looked at, it's there on our radar screen. I guess, Alec, at this stage, it's a capacity issue for us. We're a 40-person team, and the accountability division is the biggest division there. We've got an investigations manager, 3 full-time investigators, and these legal people. And we're caught up in so many projects. We've got about 60 open projects at the moment, and some of them taking a long time. That specific project is one that if we took on, we'd have to bring on more resources, and we'd need to get some expertise in that space. So I don't want to say no, we won't, but I'm just saying right now we're a bit hamstrung and snowed under.
Perhaps you can answer Paul Fallon's question in a different way, Wayne. He wants to know, can you give an overview of the cases you're tackling? Is there a way to be updated on your progress? I've put a screenshot from the OUTA website up there, so I guess all the information is there, but maybe just high level, your big projects right now? Well,
the big ones now is OUTA is a big project. We've got the National Lottery Commission. We're toying with taking on our first private prosecutions case there. There's corruption like you cannot believe. Then in the SETAs, the services SETA, and the SETA, the whole services skills development levy is a new project that we're taking on now. We have an amicus case in court on the electoral reform with the New Nation movement. We've got a whole lot of matters in state capture, and then in the public governance division now, we're dealing with matters in Parliament related to the monetary. What is it? It's with all the allocations. So the monetary allocations with the public sector bill that has recently come out. We're engaging there with the procurement bills that are taking place. So there's quite a lot of projects that are not necessarily all litigation cases. And then we've got our legal challenges on accountability with regards to maladministration and corruption. In the water space, we're pushing hard to get an independent water regulator. The water industry and our water issues in this country it's disastrous to know what's coming there. So that's just a handful. I think if you go onto the website, not everything's there. We put the main projects on the website at outa.co.za. There's a lot we've done since the ETOL matter was our first big project. We've done another 160 projects since then. We've closed about 70% of those, and we've got about 83% success rate in those projects.
Peter Francois says, congratulations to OUTA for the sterling work you're doing. I do contribute annually. I believe that all of us who wish to see justice will contribute. I'm a retired executive as a CEO of a Sunday Times top 100 company. I live in Durban. Is there any way I can assist you in raising funds? I think I'll send him send his email address to you.
You know, that's a fantastic, and thank you for that, because it, you know, we're powered by the people, and here, Alex, we always say that crowdfunding is the model that we use. We're not funded by big corporates. We were right in the beginning for that first court case, but it didn't work. Government lent on them, they ran away. So we have to be relevant to the ordinary citizen, and that's what our model's built on. So tens of thousands of people that give us an average of 120 Rand a month makes our work possible, makes us able to employ these 40 people, pay the rent, pay the data costs and everything, and do this work professionally. And, you know, I always say never underestimate. You know, a lot of people say 120 Rand, but does that work? It works. There's that saying by Edmund Burke, you know, the person who makes the biggest mistake is the guy who gives nothing because he thought he could only give a little. It's all of those thousands of littles that make a collective of active citizens. A lot of people say, well, how can I help? That 120 Rand a month makes you an active citizen. We'll do the work for you, empower us, and we'll go out there and change this country and make it a better place. And if we had double the amount of supporters, I can tell you we'd have 80 people working for us, and we'd be doing a lot more cases.
Letitia Steinberg wants.
Sorry, I must just say it takes 5 minutes at outa.co.za. Just click on the join now button, put your details in there, and for away.
Well, there it is on the screen right now. So you'd go onto that page, which I think is on your home page. It says join now. Click on that, and your $120 will a month will make you feel, or more,
or 200 a month. But even if you can only afford 50 Rand.
You know how little that is, Wayne. If having lived in the UK when we were setting up our business there for 3 years, you're talking about what, £6?
Yeah,
it's £6. You buy 2 cups of coffee. You know, 2 cups of coffee, £6. Yeah. Well, Letitia says, great work, OUTA. Which cases are highest on OUTA's list of imminent court rulings with potentially very punitive convictions, including jail sentences?
Well, we can't prosecute. It's just not our space. We can get, if you get nollie prosecute certificates where the NPA decides not to, and we're looking into one right now, because even those are difficult to come by, then we can. So it's not our job to prosecute. We lay charges. And as I've said, if you go onto this page that you've got there on our OUTA website, click on the state capture page and just have a look at how many, and the videos that we've put, and how many people that we've laid charges. If the NPA does their work, a lot of people go to jail, including Duduzane Zuma, the Guptas themselves. We really want the NPA to, for the Hawks to get these the Guptas back into this country. Salim Essa, a big kingpin in the Gupta matter, right at the top. Anush Singh, you heard his name, Transnet and Eskom, Brian Molefe, all of them, they're all equally involved. And then those politicians, those corrupt politicians that are still sitting as MPs, all of them. Have a look at that page, and you'll see how many people we've got lined up.
Have you got Nazim Hawa there? I was looking through my Gupta leaks the other day to see the nasty things he was saying about us here in Biznews. If you're going there, I'll get more people to on our team to give you the $120.
That is name, but Rudy's building more and more cases. Ben Martins is a new case that's just come to the fore. With I think we're passing that case on. By the way, we're able to build cases and pass them straight to the NPA through the law, the legal process, and that's how we're doing it now. They then take it via the Hawks, but we're fast tracking that system and the process legally. But there's lots. It's too long to just list them all here.
It's like our questions. There's lots, and we're not going to get. We've got 5 minutes to go, and we're not going to get through. There's still 40 waiting. Jack McLeod wants to know, or he says, I support and praise your organization, but are AfriForum an ally or a foe?
Look, you know, each organization to themselves. We don't work with AfriForum. I know Kali Creel, we've met. They have a mandate. It's very different to ours. Sometimes there's a gray area where there's a similarity, but it's a community that they are doing work for, whereas we are for the broader South Africa. So you know, we don't engage and we don't work with them, but they're not an enemy. They're not a foe. We don't collaborate with them at all. I think that's the short answer I can give.
Tim Elliott again says, does OUTA have any meaningful contacts and relationships with the Ministry of Justice?
No, not at a ministerial level. They do get our communications. We know they take note of what we're doing and saying. And sometimes through the parliamentary process, yes, but not on an open regular meeting basis. Not at the Ministry of Justice.
I'm going to have to close with this as a final question before you give us your final comments, Wayne. It's from Lee Barrow. She says, simply put, is prison the end goal for these looters, or is it ultimately to be stripped of power and no longer allow them to work in any sector that affects government?
I think it's a combination of both. Prison will take them out of the system for a long time, but you know, there's many ways to skin the cat, and I think you alluded to it earlier, Alec, in that when you start a case against somebody and you put it out into the public, just the pain of friends and family coming to the individual saying, hey, but you know, what is this accusation against you and why is it? That's painful for people, as opposed to eventually then getting them you know, in court and then found guilty. That pain starts right from the exposure space. So we need to bring all of these cases into the open as well. Yeah, I think that's going to be exciting as we roll out more and more of this work as we go.
Wayne, and just to close off with, I think of us as two little boys running around and barefoot in a small town in KZN. Who would have thought that you would go on to be an activist like this? Where did it come from? Where did this fire in your belly start?
I don't know, Alec. I've been asked that question a couple of times. If I look back, I just guess I get frustrated when things aren't right, when there are question marks around the modus operandi or the motive of some of the decisions that people make, both in the corporate world, because I was challenging a lot of things that were wrong in the working space as well. If I look back, it's just a matter of standing up for stuff that's wrong. And then understanding that there's consequences, and if you have to lose your job, well then so be it. And if you have to be unpopular, then so be it. And if you end up being a civil activist, which is not something I set out to do in the beginning, but here I am, and I can just want to say this, that it's not about me, it's about the team, it's about the people out there. Without the incredible team that we have at OUTA, every one of those individuals is a cog in this machine. And every supporter is a cog in the bigger picture of that machine. And for me, it's just about being bowled over by the civil courage that many citizens have. And what we must not do is allow ourselves to be brought down and the barricades to be put up by the small percentage of people that do so much that's wrong. Let's go out and remove them from society, because we've got an amazing country. We've got amazing people, good people in government as well. If we can just empower them and support them, we can turn things around. We mustn't give up. As frustrating as it is, we cannot give up, because when you give up hope, well, then we do collapse, and we collapse very quickly.
So you're not disheartened, even with the big bills we're going to have to pay for COVID-19 and all the mess that's coming out now, that quite a few politicians or politically influential people have had their fingers even in this kitty to be able to, well, in that what would you call it, bowl or honey pot that I mean, they have no shame, these people. They just steal wherever they can. You don't give up hope.
No, we can't. Look, I see it as there was a mountain we're climbing, and now we've just come to the top of it, and COVID has added another big mound on top of that. Well, we've got to go climb it. We've got to go climb it. We've got to work together. We've got to get society behind. Civil society is going to be the solution to our problems, not the politicians. So let's make sure that civil society starts taking over the running of many towns by the next time the elections come around next year. And let's make sure that we have the electoral reform that enables independence to stand at a national level. These are projects we're also working on, but we can do it together. It is disheartening sometimes, it's frustrating, but we can't let it get us down. We've got to keep going.
How do you think it's all going to end up? Because if you have a look at civil society, it's like a a flotilla now of organizations, OUTA being right in the forefront of it, of making or bringing people to account. But is this going to change our political system, or do we have to continue with a system where once you voted into power every 5 years in our country, just your party's voted into power, that you can just make the rules that as you like for the next 5 years and not really be brought accountable?
No, I think it is going to change, Alec. The electoral reform process, you know, Van Zyl Slabbert had started it. There's an appetite for it. It has to change. You cannot have a situation where Cyril Ramaphosa, who's got there through his popularity, is hamstrung and held back by the Ace Magashulas of the world. That has to change, and that's what we've got to fight harder for. But you must also remember that the pain that we bring as organized civil society to those people through exposure and then court cases and court challenges does also change things. And that's been happening more over the last few years than ever before. I'm talking post-apartheid. I mean, there was a lot of civil activism then to get a bad system out the way. And now there's a lot of civil activism to get bad people out the way and fix the system. I believe we will get there, but it's not going to happen tomorrow. We have to persevere. So perseverance, tenacity, resilience, these are the ingredients, and civil society support to do it. And I think we're getting it right.
Well, that brings the end of our Thursday noontime webinar for this week. Stuart Lohman is sitting in the background still. Stu, what happens now with the YouTube video of this webinar?
Excellent, thanks, Alec, and thanks for your time, Wayne. Very interesting to hear.
Thank you.
Alex, so I've just put the link to the YouTube channel on the chat there. What we do with all webinars is we post them as soon as the video has been processed by the system. I'll publish the full webinar on the YouTube channel, and you can just access it via that link on the chat.
And Wayne, we'll send you the questions that you weren't able to get around to, and if you do manage to find time, I'm sure you wouldn't mind dropping those people a line with the proviso that all of them sign up to become members of OUTA.
Absolutely. Please do. Please pass the word. And to all our supporters out there, we just can't thank you enough. And to those of you who want to know how to become active citizens, join this movement. You'll enjoy it, and you'll get our newsletters, and you'll feel proud. I can assure you that we'll make you proud. And just to my team, to the Exco and the board and everyone at OUTA, well done to all of you. They're the stars. Thanks, Alec, for your time. Okay.
Thanks, Wayne, and thanks to everyone who attended today. Until the next time, from me, Alec Hogg, cheerio.
Cheers.